Our first scripture lesson today is from Micah 6, verse 8. He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. The second reading is from Galatians 2, verses 22 through 23. By contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. And lastly, from Matthew 25, verse 40, and the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I am as surprised as you are to see me up here as your laity speaker. When Christy asked me to do this, my first thought was, how did this happen? Did every single person in the congregation say no when she asked them to do it? Well, obviously I said yes, because I want to share a story with you about someone who made a profound difference in my life. I want you to think about a person that made a profound difference in your life and what it meant to you. And I also want you to think about how you might make a profound difference in someone else's life. My story is very personal and close to the heart. I don't know if I can get through it without crying. I'm armed with some Kleenex up here. And if I do, just wait patiently and meditate on these three words: love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously. The story starts a few years after this picture was taken. But I want to introduce you to my family. My parents, Isabel and Luther Ballance, and my older brother, Dan. I'm the one that looks like a white sunflower. I do. When this was taken, we were living on a tobacco farm in Johnston County. We didn't live on the farm long because things didn't go as planned. We moved to Rocky Mount, where my father got a job as a supervisor in a tobacco factory. My mother stayed home and cared for my brother and me. But when I was 3, here I am at 3 years old, in the front of the duplex we were renting with my brother, and my brother was 6. I'm sorry, this is my father and me. When my brother was 6 and I was 3, he was ready to start school. Money was tight, and my mother decided to return to work as a school teacher. Well, that left me at home. And in those days, there were few options for childcare. It was pretty much kindergarten, which we couldn't afford, begging a relative, and believe me, no relatives were standing in line waiting to spend the day with me every day. My parents loved me and my brother, and they did the very best they could to take care of us. There was a woman named Nannie Williams, who my father had known for a long time through his work with the tobacco market. She'd worked for my parents before I was born when they lived in Rocky Mount previously. My father always said Nannie was a good worker and he could trust her. At the time, Nannie was working full-time as a stemmer at China American Tobacco Company, where my father was working. This is a picture of China American Tobacco Factory, and it was taken about the same time that they were there. Back then, a stemmer took the middle vein out of the tobacco leaf by hand so the leaves could be processed, but now all that kind of stuff is done by machines. This picture, it's not a very clear one, was taken of some stemmers in 1937. Stemming by hand was tedious, dirty, dusty, low-paying work that dried out your hands. And of course, the factory wasn't air-conditioned. A lot of women in the black community worked as stemmers during tobacco season. My father asked Nannie if she would leave her stemming job and come take care of me. Years later, Nannie told me her side. Well, at first I thought, Lord, Mr. Ballance, I am too old to raise any more white people's children. But I didn't say that out loud. Truth was, I was making good money at the tobacco factory because the stemmers got paid by the pound. And if you worked hard, you could make good money. But it was seasonal. And when winter came, it was hard to make ends meet, even with part-time jobs. And I needed money for coal so I could heat my house. And Mr. Ballance said he'd pay me year-round and be sure I had enough money for coal. She said, now, baby, the first day was hard. It was just you and me, and I tried to get you to talk to me, but you weren't having it. You just followed me around with your thumb in your mouth, looking at me, watching every move I made, dragging your little blanket around. About mid-morning, you sat down at your pegboard desk that you had your little record player on. You only had 2 records, My Darling Clementine and How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? You know which one, the one with the waggly tail. Nannie said, well, you might as well not have had Clementine because you never played that one. The only record you ever played was Doggy in the Window, and you played it over and over and over and over and over and over until I thought I would lose my mind. Your mama warned me that you might do that. So I didn't say anything, but I thought, Lord, what has Mr. Ballance got me into? Finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I said, Em, in a few minutes, I'm going to have a tea party at the kitchen table. Would you like to come? And before I could even finish saying it, you were climbing up on the chair. Time passed, and Nannie and I adjusted to each other. She let me make biscuits with her. She showed me how to plant flowers and told me about growing up on a tobacco farm. And while all this was happening, I was learning that love comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Nannie would sing her favorite song to me. Spoiler alert, it was not Doggy in the Window. It was, I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. You probably never heard either of these songs, but today is your lucky day. Because if you stay a few minutes after the benediction, you'll have the opportunity to hear both of them thanks to Katie Hoffler and Rob Green. Nannie was kind and patient, and I loved her. I wanted to be just like her. When she put on hand cream, I wanted to put on hand cream. So she would rub the cream in her hands and take my little hands and cup them in her hands. And she would rub both of our hands with hand cream. And when she did, I could feel the love coming right through her fingers. I thought, this must be what heaven's like. Somebody you love to pieces just takes your hands and rubs hand cream on them all day long. One morning when I was about 5 years old, Nannie met me. I met Nannie at the front door crying. I said, Daddy was drinking last night, and he talked mean to me, and he said bad words too. Nannie listened, and I knew she believed me because she'd known my father for a long time. Nannie looked at me and she said, I know you feel hurt, baby, and I'm so sorry. You know, Mr. Ballance is a good man on the inside, but sometimes something gets in the way and the good can't get to the outside. You didn't do anything wrong, baby, and you can't change it. That's something Mr. Ballance has to do. When he gets that way, you just go upstairs to your room and close the door and get out your coloring book and color. You don't need to be studying him because you're a good girl, and all you have to do is keep on being a good girl. In that little conversation, Nannie comforted me, affirmed me, validated my reality, and offered me coping skills. And she did it all without saying the words alcohol, drunk, or abusive. She figured out a way to tell me what I needed to know in a way that I could understand it as a child. When children grow up in trauma, one of the most influential factors in their healing is having a relationship with at least one supportive adult that they can trust and they can talk to. Nannie was that person for me, and I would not be standing up here today if it had not been for her. When I was older, I learned that Nannie had grown up on a farm with lots of brothers and sisters. She was the youngest. She said once a week on Saturday night, they all got a bath in the wash tub. She said she was the last one, so the water wasn't looking very good then. Nannie's family had little and sometimes no access to health care, dental care, adequate housing, quality education, and the other services and opportunities that the white community had. Nannie only, if a person went to the hospital at this time, when Nannie was growing up, if a person went to the hospital for an emergency, they had to wait until all the people who were white were treated first. Nannie only attended school until about the 3rd grade. Then she started working in the tobacco fields, then in the tobacco factory, then as a child care provider and a domestic worker. These were the only jobs she had in her lifetime. When she came to work for my family, she was almost 50 years old. At that time, she lived in a 3-room house, not a 3-bedroom house, a house with no hall, just doors connecting 3 rooms. It's commonly called a shotgun house in the South. Nannie had the front room only because she shared this house with 4 other people, a housemate named Martha Ann and her 3 children. All lived in the 2nd room. The kitchen and the bathroom were in the 3rd room. When you stood in Nannie's room, there were places in the wall that you could see through to the outside, and she let me look out. As a child, I thought this was the coolest thing you could have, but I see it very differently now. I'm sure that every day in the outside world, Nannie dealt with prejudice, racism, and disrespect, but when she entered my little world, she consistently treated me with dignity, respect, kindness, and love. Even with the burden she carried, she realized that my home was unstable, that I was struggling, and she gave me the very best that she had. She was deeply religious, and her faith carried her, and I'm sure she did a lot of praying during the time she worked for my family. Nannie never had children. When I asked her why she had never married, she said, "I ain't studying no men." When I asked her one day if she'd ever had any surgeries or operations, she said she had an operation in her 20s because a doctor told her he had to take something out that she didn't need, but she didn't know what it was. I strongly suspect that Nannie was a survivor of the work of the North Carolina Eugenics Board. I want to take a minute to tell you about this. The North Carolina Eugenics Board was established in 1933 to oversee sterilizations, and it was finally disbanded in 1977 when the commission was finally abolished. The board was responsible for one of the greatest injustices ever imposed on the black communities in North Carolina, and especially on women. After you have a sterilization operation, you can't have children. Between 1929 and 1974, 7,686 men and women in North Carolina were sterilized, most against their will, because they were deemed, and these are in quotes, mentally ill, unfit, feeble-minded, idiots, morons, or because the powers that be felt it was necessary for the common good of the public. Most were pressured and coerced. Some sterilizations were performed during other surgeries without the patient's knowledge, and some never knew they had been sterilized until they tried to have children of their own. Here's what I want you to know. Of these 7,686, it is estimated that 5,000 were black at a time when people who were black made up only 25% of North Carolina's population. People of color who were uneducated and living below the poverty line, or who had delivered children at a young age, were disproportionately targeted. North Carolina ranked number 3 in the nation for sterilizations performed, not something to be proud of. They ran a campaign of disinformation to sway the public. Here's a statement I found in the marketing materials. Indiscriminate charity has been a fruitful cause of survival of the unfit. I sort of translated that to mean if you give to the food pantry, you are to blame for extending the lives of the unfit. Somebody we all know said, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me." Another one said, like a tree, eugenics draws its materials from many sources and organizes them in a harmonious entity. Really? Eugenics is like a tree. I don't even think this person knew what a tree was, actually. If you're wondering why you never heard of eugenics, or why you know very little about it, it's because in many instances, black history has been and is being suppressed and minimized or completely eliminated. It hurts all of us when this happens. Eugenics has been called genocide. Even though it is painful to hear about it, we must acknowledge it and remember it for the horrible injustice that it was. It took many years for me to begin to understand that my white skin shielded me from so much, including eugenics, and that it opened doors for me that were closed and locked to Nannie for her entire life. It would be longer before I began to grasp the scope of the injustice, racism, and oppression that Nannie and other people of color have endured in the past and continue to endure today. I was talking to a friend of mine who is white not long ago, and she said this, "But Emily, that was a long time ago. That was in the 50s and the 60s. It's not like that now." I disagree. Fathers who are black still have to have the talk with their sons, including how to behave if you are pulled over by a law enforcement officer. Mothers still pray at night that their sons and daughters have a long life, will be safe, won't be assaulted. Racism and hatred are still alive and well, and their forms keep changing, like a virus that keeps mutating, or for you sci-fi folks, like a shapeshifter. Things might look better, and you look a little closer, and you realize, same thing. I believe that we are all good-hearted people. And I know that those of you who attend church at Millbrook wake up every morning, and before you even get out of bed, you read the long version of the vision statement. Am I right? I can't even say that with a straight face. In case you forgot it, we're going to look at it. It is love boldly, What it means is what I want you to listen to on these three things. Embrace and include people of every age, nation, race, and gender. Walk alongside, serve joyfully, walk alongside the most vulnerable among us, offering care and compassion with joy. Lead courageously, following Jesus' example, resist and dismantle all systems of evil, injustice, oppression, striving for peace, justice, and reconciliation. One of the reasons I love Millbrook is because we have a racial healing team, and my fellow members are amazing, dedicated people who come together to educate people, fight racism, and dismantle injustice, and support the Black community. There is so much work to do. My friends who are Black tell me they're tired. They're tired of working to protect their basic rights, their voting rights. They're tired of educating people who are white because they have to say the same thing over and over. They're tired of fighting the same battles that their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents fought. They need our support, and they deserve it. I believe as Christians, we are called to be part of this work. I believe we're here to help each other, and that God sometimes places people in our lives to help us or so we can help them. You have the opportunity to be that person in the lives of our friends in the Black community by becoming more aware of injustice, by taking a stand. For example, asking someone to stop telling racist jokes or speaking up when you see a person of color mistreated. Reading and preserving Black history. Saying, I see you, I hear you, I've got your back, and meaning it. And I have a list of many more things you can do, as well as a list of Black-owned restaurants that you can support if you'd like, which will be made available to you on your way out of the building. Now, before we wrap up, I want to share the rest of the story of Nannie. Here is the only picture of Nannie that I have, because when we were growing up, my family did not own a camera, so all the pictures I've shown you were either given to me by friends or family, or I found them online. I'm so glad that I am in this picture with Nannie. Nannie continued to encourage me, support me, celebrate my accomplishments throughout her life. She continued to do domestic work for my family and my parents as they aged, and she cared for my father when he was dying. I moved away from Rocky Mount in my 20s, but I always stayed in touch with Nannie. When I came home, I visited her in an affordable housing apartment that my mother helped her get, and then later at a long-term care facility. And we wrote letters back and forth until she passed away when she was 82 years old and I was in my 30s. In her letters, she wrote things like, "You are a smart girl. You will always be my baby. I pray for you every day. I love you. You're a good girl. Just keep on being a good girl." And she always signed her letters as "Love, your other mother." And I cried every time I read them, just like I'm doing right now. Thank you for your attention.